My family said I was ungrateful. I didn't cry when my uncle died. That fact bothered me more than the death itself. Uncle Daniel was my biological father's older brother, a quiet presence in my life, who existed mostly on the periphery. He sent birthday cards with neat handwriting. He remembered my favorite books. He never asked invasive questions or made promises he couldn't keep. After my father died when I was young, Uncle Daniel became the only remaining thread tying me to that side of the family. Still, we weren't close in the way people expect you to mourn. So when my mother told me he had passed in his sleep, I nodded, said okay, and went back to rinsing a plate in the sink. My stepfather noticed. He always noticed when my reactions didn't align with what he thought they should be. "That's it?" he asked from behind me. "Your uncle dies, and you don't even look upset?" I dried my hands slowly. "I am upset," he scoffed. "Doesn't look like it." That was how things were between us. Observational cruelty, masquerading as concern. My stepfather entered my life when I was 9. By 11, he had decided I should call him Dad. Not privately, not gradually, but publicly, like a performance. The first time he corrected me at a grocery store, I froze. "Dad," he said pointedly, smiling too wide. I looked at him and said, clearly, "You're not my dad." The cashier stopped scanning. Someone behind us coughed. My stepfather's smile collapsed inward like a punctured lung. From that moment on, something calcified between us. My mother tried to smooth it over. She always tried. But trying is not the same as standing there and saying nothing. They argued about it in whispers at night, about respect, about gratitude, about how I embarrassed him, about how I needed to understand my place. By the time I was 13, my mother stopped working. My stepfather framed it as generosity. "The kids need you," he told her, his hand firm on her shoulder. What kind of mother leaves her babies with strangers? They had 4 children together in quick succession. My half-siblings filled the house with noise and need and chaos. I loved them fiercely. That love made everything harder. What my stepfather didn't say was that dependence is easier to manage than partnership. Every time my mother spoke up for herself, money became the weapon. "Do you know how much I work? Do you know what I provide? Do you know what you'd have without me?" After those fights, my mother came to me. Always me. She cried on the edge of my bed while I sat rigid, offering tissues and silence like an unpaid therapist. The last time she came to me, she whispered something that lodged itself into my bones. "I feel trapped." I told her the truth. I told her this was what he wanted, that all of us were in school now, that she could get a job, that I would help with the kids, that I would quit my own job if I had to. She nodded. She hugged me. Then she told him everything. They sat me down 2 days later. The word intervention was his, not mine. He spoke first, his tone measured, practiced. "You're still a child. You know nothing about marriage. You need to stop interfering in conversations that don't concern you." My mother stared at the floor. "We've talked," he continued, "and we've decided you're going to live with your aunt and uncle for a while." I looked at my mother. "You mean you've decided?" He snapped back instantly. "It doesn't matter who decided it. It's happening. Go pack your things. They'll be here in 3 hours." I waited for my mother to look up. She didn't. I packed quietly. Uncle Liam and Aunt Marlena arrived exactly on time. They looked like people from a different life, well-dressed, calm, polite. Their grief sat gently on them instead of curdling into resentment. I had heard whispers that they'd been trying for a baby for years, that it hadn't worked. Now, they were taking in a 17-year-old girl with a suitcase and a reputation for being difficult. Uncle Liam loaded my bag into the car while my stepfather made small talk, as if this were a favor instead of an eviction. My mother reached for me at the door. I turned away and got into the car. She didn't follow. Their house smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. They apologized for the guest room being full of clutter. I slept on an air mattress in the living room that first night, staring at the ceiling fan and waiting for the familiar tension to settle into my chest. It never came. The next day, Aunt Marlena took me shopping. Clothes, furniture, decorations for my room, groceries. She asked what colors I liked. She listened to the answers. Later that day, they built my bed while I put groceries away. 2 hours later, I had a room. 7 months after that, on my 18th birthday, they asked if they could adopt me. I said yes. They threw a party a month later. My biological mother came. So did her husband. So did my siblings. I hugged my sibling tightly. I missed them in a way that hurt behind my eyes. My stepfather didn't say a word to me. 30 minutes later, he was drunk enough to forget his restraint. And when I called Uncle Liam Dad, everything went left. When I said the word Dad, I didn't think. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't rebellion. It was muscle memory forming in real time, the kind that grows quietly when someone shows up every day without demanding credit. I work with Dad, I said to one of Uncle Liam's colleagues. He actually taught me most of what I know. The word barely landed before the atmosphere shifted. You've got to be joking. The voice came from behind me, slurred and loud enough to slice through the room. Conversation stuttered to a stop. Music continued playing, oblivious. My stepfather stood near the kitchen island, his face flushed, his jaw tight, a drink clenched like proof in his hand. So that's it, he said. You get shipped off for a few months, and suddenly my brother replaces me. I felt my aunt's hand tense on my arm. This isn't the time, I said quietly. He laughed, sharp and humorless. No, this is exactly the time. I raised you. I fed you. I give your mother everything. And you stand here calling him Dad, like I never existed. Uncle Liam stepped forward. Lower your voice. My stepfather ignored him and moved closer to me instead, his presence invasive, his breath heavy with alcohol. You don't get to rewrite history, he said. You don't get to punish me because you didn't like hearing the truth. I held my ground. I'm not punishing you. You made your choices. That's when he touched me, not grabbing, not enough to make a scene, just enough to make it clear it was intentional. Don't, I said. Don't touch her, Uncle Liam said at the same time. My stepfather smiled, slow and ugly. What are you going to do? He shoved Uncle Liam. It wasn't violent enough to injure him. It was worse. It was deliberate. Someone screamed, and everyone else started talking over each other. My aunt stepped between us. My siblings began crying in confusion, and that was the moment everything crossed a line it could never uncross. The police arrived faster than I expected. My stepfather laughed while they asked questions. He gestured wildly, spilling fragments of justification across the lawn like broken glass. It's a family misunderstanding. She's dramatic. She's always been like this. Then he saw the way Uncle Liam stood in front of me. The laughter stopped. As the officers guided him toward the cruiser, he twisted around and shouted my name. You did this, he yelled. You're tearing your family apart. He tried to move toward me. They handcuffed him. My biological mother stood frozen on the porch, her face pale, her hands trembling. She didn't come to me. My phone began vibrating before the sun came up. Voicemails, texts, missed calls. I assume he made bail because I had missed calls from him too, and also from my mother, from relatives who had never cared enough to know my favorite color. My biological mother's voicemail was the worst. You don't understand, she cried. He's your sibling's father. If you press charges, you're ruining everything. Please, fix this. She never asked if I was okay. I blocked his number and my biomom's number. He found other ways. 3 days later, he sat in his car across the street from my campus. He didn't approach, he didn't wave, he just watched. The next evening, flowers appeared on my aunt and uncle's porch. The card read, We're still family. Security footage showed him circling the block for nearly an hour. The police told us to document everything, so we did. A week later, I received a call from a lawyer. Uncle Daniel had left me something, a storage unit. He listed you specifically, the lawyer said. No one else. I almost laughed. Uncle Daniel had always been quiet, but never careless. The fact that he'd left something solely to me felt intentional in a way I couldn't yet articulate. The unit was small, clean, climate-controlled. Every box inside was labeled, not with names, with dates. The earliest date matched my 10th birthday. Inside were photographs, notes, printed emails, my school schedule, my extracurriculars, my address. My stomach dropped. The second box was labeled with my first day of high school. Inside were screenshots of social media posts I didn't remember making public, notes about who I spent time with, what time I came home. The handwriting was familiar. The final box was labeled with the date I moved out. Inside was a USB drive. The police said it was stalking. The timeline stretched back years. Uncle Daniel hadn't been watching me. He had been documenting him. There were copies of restraining order drafts never filed, notes about my stepfather's behavior escalating, emails Uncle Daniel had sent to lawyers asking about legal guardianship. He had been preparing. And now he was gone. When the police searched the storage unit under warrant, they found recent entries. Updated. Current. My stepfather was arrested that night. Stalking, trespassing, harassment. When they asked if I wanted to press charges, I said yes, without hesitation. My biological mother came 2 days later. She cried. She told me I was selfish, that I didn't understand sacrifice, that I was destroying the stability of my siblings' lives. I asked her why she never protected me. She didn't answer. Biomom's side of the family never approved of the adoption. They said my aunt and uncle stole me. They said I should have been grateful. They said blood mattered more than safety. I didn't lose a family. I finally saw which one I never had, and which one chose me anyway. I waited a long time before posting this update, not because I didn't know what happened next, but because I needed distance from it. Time has a way of sanding the sharpest edges without erasing the shape of what hurt you. I wanted to be sure I was writing from clarity, not adrenaline. Enough has happened now that silence feels dishonest. The arraignment was brief. Charges were read aloud in a voice that didn't waver or soften. Stalking, harassment, trespassing, intimidation. The words sounded clinical, almost impersonal, but the evidence did not. The storage unit inventory became the spine of the case. Every box, every date, every note created a timeline too precise to dismiss as coincidence. The prosecution laid it out cleanly, methodically, the way people do when they want a jury to understand that this wasn't a momentary lapse or a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. My stepfather didn't look at me during the hearing. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as if refusing to acknowledge me would somehow erase me. I realized then that he never wanted a daughter. He wanted control. The most damning part wasn't the photographs or the printed posts. It was the annotations, small, meticulous notes in the margins. She's pulling away. She listens to her aunt. She's getting harder to manage. The phrase to manage appeared more than once. Uncle Daniel had underlined it in red ink. According to the detective, Uncle Daniel had been building a case long before I knew I needed one. He had suspected that if anything ever came to light, I would be blamed first. So he left me proof, not vengeance, protection. My biomom requested to see me again after the second hearing. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She cried immediately, her grief spilling out in familiar patterns. She told me she was scared. She told me she felt alone. She told me she didn't know how she would manage 4 children by herself. I listened. Then I asked her a question I had been carrying for years. Did you know? She didn't answer at first. Then she said, I didn't want to. That was her truth, not that she didn't see it, that she didn't want to. My mother's side of the family stopped calling. No dramatic announcements, no confrontations, just absence. They told each other stories that made it easier to live with their silence. That I was ungrateful, that I had been manipulated, that adoption was a betrayal. My aunt and uncle didn't argue with them. They didn't need to. They stood where they always had, beside me. This part hurts the most. I still see my siblings, supervised, carefully, in spaces that prioritize safety over comfort. They don't understand everything. They don't need to. They know I love them. They know I didn't leave them. One day, when they're older, they'll ask questions, and I'll tell them the truth without poisoning it with bitterness. I kept it. Not because I wanted the contents, but because it felt wrong to dismantle something built to protect me. Eventually, I transferred everything to a locked digital archive and donated the physical space. The last box I opened was labeled with a date that hadn't happened yet, my 19th birthday. Inside was a single envelope, a note from Uncle Daniel. It read, You deserve to grow up without being watched like prey. If you're reading this, it means you finally did. I'm in college. I call my parents mom and dad without thinking. The word doesn't catch in my throat anymore. Sometimes I still grieve the family I thought I had. Other times, I'm grateful for the one that stepped in when silence became dangerous. People ask me if I regret pressing charges. I don't. What I regret is how long I was taught to confuse endurance with love.